Whispering Woods is enjoying its new status as a conservation facility with the heavily themed Little Asia area. Genevieve Joyce is thrilled to have these exotic Asian species here at the Haven, and equally as excited to have established a close relationship with Sabina Maharjan at the Asian Conservancy Project. Her latest find? A group of Lar gibbons saved from wildlife traffickers. It's a busy time of year, and despite Imogen Chen's recent work accident and an increased workload for the rest of the staff, things are running smoothly. Until that is the disappearance of the red panda. Feng Liwei, the sponsor of the Chinese garden, is not happy and threatens to pull financial support if the red panda isn't found in the next 3 days. Fingers are pointed and tensions rise. Wesley Parsons, head zookeeper, accuses Genevieve of trying to grow the Haven much too quickly, while Genevieve believes Wesley has been distracted lately and not fulfilling all of his duties. Arthur Joyce, ever the peacekeeper, steps in to mediate, but Genevieve and Wesley refuse to speak. Meanwhile, the Lar gibbons still need a place to recuperate, and with this bad press, the Haven needs to come up with some sort of gimmick to keep people coming through the door. Luckily, Hamza Narizuman is up for another design challenge, and Anna Kingston is looking forward to designing some new educational resources. Welcome back to Whispering Woods Wildlife Haven. Hey everyone, Sparrow here. So nice to have you, whether you're a new or returning viewer, and I'm really happy to be back in Whispering Woods this week. It's been a busy few weeks, but that just is what it is, and I'll take all of the Planet Zoo time I can get. To start off with today, I'm using these rock walls by Pachacamac. You can find them on the Steam Workshop, and these will be the backdrop of our Lar gibbon enclosure. I'm doing my best to make sure there isn't a repeating pattern, but I'll be adding more roots and plants to it later anyways, so hopefully it will just blend into the background. So that should make sure the Lar gibbons don't escape the enclosure. Meanwhile, to ensure guests don't step into the enclosure, I'm going to put together this simple fence using the African beams. Don't worry, this ugly brown color will be recolored a few times more before the end of the episode. You know the struggle. As usual, I'm creating my piece on the grid to make it easier to manage before going in to rotate each log so they don't all look the same, varying the heights a little as well, and then making sure it's all in a group together before outlining my enclosure with it. I'm going to hide the keeper gate back here as well. The staff will have easy access to it through the staff area right next door. And yes, I did plan that ahead of time. To break up the monotony of this fence and make sure the guests have some good views of the animals, I decided to add a small viewing window right here. When guests come up the path past the Markhor and Takin habitat and past the staff area, this window will almost be inviting them to come check out the next enclosure. Once I'd built that first peek through, I created a slightly larger window section, and that's going to act as our main guest viewing area on the ground level. Yes, there's more coming, so definitely keep watching. I'm really trying to limit the amount of viewing opportunities for some enclosures, since I feel like a lot of my habitats in Whispering Woods are just these big open spaces where guests can basically stand anywhere they want to view. Which, for the game's mechanics, is good, but for the semi-realism I'm going for, it really isn't. This is one solution to that, so guests will have a nice clear view of the gibbons through these windows, and we'll make sure they get some nice shade here as well. There's no clear architectural style I'm going for with this enclosure, just something that feels tropical. Unless you count tree houses as an architectural style, I guess. Which is exactly what we're moving on to next. This final viewing area will be more of an educational center that also happens to look out over the Lar gibbon habitat. The amount of time I spent trying to figure out how to make this work, only to basically completely change my plans, is insane. As it will stand at the end of this episode, the treehouse will only be accessible from the ridge above Little Asia rather than from Little Asia itself, because I couldn't get the stairs up to it working the way I wanted to. Maybe I've been watching too many Planet Coaster 2 videos, but I really wish we could do narrow, tight staircases that the guests can actually use. I did try the Q path trick, and I'll pop a photo up of what a friend Digital Blob managed to do, but I couldn't get the same thing working. And yes, I know free build would solve all of these problems, but I decided on a creative solution instead, which is just building fake stairs out of construction pieces. They obviously won't be usable by guests in-game, but I'm really just going for a specific rickety jungle treehouse look here. Kind of Tarzan's treehouse, but also not, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't an inspiration. I started with measuring out the distances between stairs and arranging them along the slope before creating a landing between the two sets and having the stairs double back on themselves. Some support structures underneath to make sure the stairs don't collapse, and also because I thought this looked pretty cool from the pathway. For safety purposes, we'll install some ropes along the edges. Not the safest thing ever, but like I said already, we're really just going for a specific look more than anything else. To finish up, here is the Q path trick I mentioned earlier. You place down the path you want as a Q path, this one is 2 meters wide, and then go through and delete the entrance one piece at a time, replacing it with the standard path texture that you want. Because both ends are 2 meters, the new path will snap to that same width, even though it's supposed to be a 4-meter path. I'll keep doing that all the way up to the stairs, and there we have it. Underneath our treehouse, I'll be adding a bit of a backstage or sheltered area for the gibbons. I'm definitely not an expert or even an amateur when it comes to gibbon care, especially since I'm not actually a big fan of primates, but I do know that many zoos keep their gibbons outdoors in the UK. In fact, my local zoo in Canada has a Lar gibbon and it spends a lot of its time in the outdoor enclosure, even in the cooler months. That gibbon is the sole reason why I decided to include these guys. The last time I visited the zoo, he put on such a good show. He was clearly showing off for us and coming right up to the glass, making funny faces, being super vocal. It was really fun to watch. He managed to win me over just a little bit that day. Foliage is up next, and I decided to use the Tropical Asia palette solely because I don't really want to have to put up with the animals being upset about the types of plants in the enclosure. I know many of these plants wouldn't survive year-round in this climate, so the explanation is that some of the smaller plants can be replanted seasonally, some of them can be moved in and out of the enclosure, and still others could have stand-ins in real life. The strangler fig I've used as a centerpiece is part of the ficus family, and there are plants in that family that can be grown outdoors in the UK, so it's not that big of a stretch. Fountain bamboo is another interesting one because there are varieties that are hardy down to about minus 15 degrees Celsius. Even here in Canada, some zoos grow bamboo outdoors and then wrap it to protect it from the harsh winters. So I wouldn't be too worried about that plant at least. And now begins the struggle of trying to get enough grass into this enclosure. I like to paint my habitats with grass or long grass, whatever we need more of, underneath the planted areas, rock on any elevated part like behind the mud walls, and dirt and sand for the pathways throughout the enclosure. Since I wasn't hitting the grass percentage, I decided to extend some of these planted areas, and I'm really glad I did because it helps to limit the sightlines even more and gives the gibbons a little more privacy, on the ground at least. Which is not where they should be spending most of their time, seeing as I spent a long time trying to figure out which climbing structures would work best in this enclosure. I don't think I've ever used the metal climbing frames. See, I'm not a fan of primates, as mentioned earlier. And I actually found them so difficult to work with. I had position snap and rotation turned on, but it somehow still wasn't snapping to the ends like it was supposed to. Maybe I just had too much foliage in the way, but I did manage to cobble together these two climbing structures, one slightly lower than the other. I also added some platforms on these log pieces to a few parts of the enclosure for some added height variations. Hopefully the gibbons like them. I have already caught them brachiating on some of these structures. Maybe you just caught a glimpse of the treehouse in the background there. So we're going to rewind just a bit so I can show you how it came together. First, I used the painted bamboo pieces, recolored to this light beige color, to create the walls. I don't love the texture of the bamboo wall pieces, so I just made my own. Also, going to include a window on this wall and the other wall that faces the enclosure, but because I wanted the segments on the bamboo to line up, we're also going to have to add some more dark trim. Outlining those windows with marquee beams, you can see I initially put mesh in here, but when I was trying to look out those windows into the enclosure, the mesh looked so bad. So we're going to replace that with some glass instead. A modern treehouse with traditional elements, like this thatch roof to tie it in with the viewing area below. Some final details in the form of enrichment items and some guest-facing signs, and we're ready to go on a jungle adventure. Hey, and welcome to our new Lar gibbon habitat. Here's that peek through window from the path that is inviting us in. Let's see if we can get a good look at the gibbons. Oh, there's one climbing up right now. And this way we find our educational center. So I thought I would do a walking tour of this because you didn't get to see me fill it out, and that's because I wanted to have lots of time to talk about some of the things that you'll find in here. Some gorgeous views of the rest of Little Asia from up here too. So this place is our brand new education center, and you might see some pretty cool props all over the place. So these are by Mr. Gecko, and they are going to be part of his vintage prop pack. So you can stay tuned for that. It should be on the workshop probably sometime around Christmas. Christmas come early maybe. So we do have this radio equipment. We have these oil lanterns. I've been using those all over the place. We also have a globe. We have some suitcases. And then we have these beautiful, beautiful books, as well as a magnifying glass. And this radio, inside of which I hid a speaker so that these guests can get some education. As I mentioned in the video, you do get some nice views of the enclosure from up here, as well as other parts of Little Asia. And it will be accessible by in-game guests through this pathway right here, which will lead to an undecided future segment of the zoo. The Lar Gibbons look quite happy in here, and I'm also happy that I gave these primates a chance. Maybe my opinion of them will slowly change. In the meantime, our staff have been busy looking for the missing red panda, but they have unfortunately not been able to find it. What do you think happened? Leave me a comment and subscribe so you don't miss the update. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.